The entire court had assembled to witness what they were calling the pity wedding. Hundreds of nobles crowded the grand cathedral, their jewels glinting in the stained-glass light. Merchants and commoners pressed against the outer walls to glimpse this spectacle. The political marriage that would save Moonvale from complete collapse under Shadowcrest's dominance. The air thrummed with barely suppressed gossip, thick as incense smoke, and beneath the organ's solemn notes, whispers. "I heard she's dreadfully plain," a duchess murmured behind her prayer book. Her companion leaned closer, voice dripping with false sympathy. 23 and never been courted, her own father kept her hidden away. "That tells you everything, doesn't it?" "Poor King Timothy," someone else sighed from a nearby pew. "Cursed with an ugly bride for the sake of politics." At the altar, carved from black marble and silver, said King Timothy stood rigid as stone. He cut a devastating figure in ceremonial armor, broad-shouldered, tall, with dark hair swept back from a face too handsome and too cold. His jaw was set, his golden eyes fixed on some distant point beyond the cathedral walls. His expression betrayed nothing. No anticipation, no curiosity, not even resignation. The indifference was deliberate, it had to be. A king showing emotion at a forced wedding was a king showing weakness. Lucy Lamp watched him from behind her suffocating veil. She stood at the cathedral's entrance, one trembling hand resting on her father's arm, heavy silk and damask skirts weighing her down like chains. The dress was deliberately unflattering, shapeless, with high collars and long sleeves, layers upon layers designed to obscure rather than flatter. And the veil. God, the veil. It was a masterpiece of concealment, thick ivory silk, multiple layers, falling past her shoulders like a shroud. Through the fabric, she could barely make out shapes and shadows. But she could hear everything. "This is it," someone whispered near the front pews. The organ swelled. Her father squeezed her arm once, warning or encouragement. She couldn't tell, and they began the long walk down the aisle. Chapter 1. The Morning After. Lucy woke alone in the royal chambers as dawn bled through the heavy velvet curtains. The massive bed felt like an ocean around her, cold silk sheets twisted around her body. She sat up slowly, her wedding dress from the night before discarded in a careless heap near the door, evidence of her solitary return to these rooms after the reception. Timothy had not come to her. After the ceremony, after the endless feast where nobles toasted their unexpected fortune and courtiers whispered behind jeweled hands, after the traditional escort to the wedding chambers with ribald songs and knowing laughter, Timothy had bowed stiffly, murmured something about urgent council business, and disappeared into the palace's labyrinthine corridors, leaving her alone. On their wedding night, Lucy pressed her palms against her eyes, fighting the sting of humiliation. What had she expected? That beauty would erase deception? That desire would override pride? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she called, hastily smoothing her sleeping gown. A young woman entered, curtsying low. She had kind eyes and an easy smile that seemed genuine. "Good morning, Your Majesty. I'm Sarah, wife to James, the King's beta. I've been assigned to assist you in adjusting to court life." Lucy recognized the careful phrasing. Assigned, not volunteered. "I appreciate your assistance, Sarah." "The King requests your presence at breakfast in the formal dining hall," Sarah said, moving to lay out a day dress, deep green velvet that would complement Lucy's coloring. "The entire council will be present." Of course they would. A performance, then. Lucy stood, allowing Sarah to help her dress, feeling the other woman's quiet efficiency. As Sarah fastened the buttons at her back, Lucy ventured, "The palace seems larger than I expected." Sarah's fingers paused for just a moment. It can be overwhelming at first. The court here operates differently than in Moonvale. More formal. More. She searched for a diplomatic word. Cutthroat. Lucy supplied dryly. Sarah's lips quirked. "I was going to say competitive, but yes. That too." She finished the buttons and moved to Lucy's hair. If I may speak freely, your majesty? Please. The ladies of the court are surprised by you. They expected one thing and received another. Some are delighted. Others feel deceived. Sarah met Lucy's eyes in the mirror. Be careful who you trust. Including you? Lucy asked quietly. Sarah considered this. My loyalty is to my mate, who is loyal to the king. But I believe in fairness. And whatever game your father played, you're the one who has to live with the consequences. She secured the final pin in Lucy's hair. For what it's worth, I think you're brave. Coming here, facing all of this. Lucy blinked back sudden tears. Thank you. The walk to the dining hall felt like a march to execution. Servants bowed as she passed, their eyes following her with open curiosity. She heard whispers trailing in her wake, beautiful, deceptive, lucky, untrustworthy. The dining hall doors opened before her, and conversation died. Chapter 2: The Strategy of Seduction. The formal presentation to court was a spectacle of barely concealed hostility wrapped in silk and false smiles. Lucy stood on the dais beside Timothy's throne, her hand resting lightly on his armrest as tradition demanded. The throne room was packed, nobles from every major house, ambassadors from allied kingdoms, wealthy merchants granted audience, and what seemed like every gossip in Shadowcrest. Lords and ladies, Timothy's voice carried through the cavernous space. I present to you Queen Lucy Lamp-Levin of Shadowcrest, formerly of Unveiled. My wife. Your queen. The applause was polite. Too polite. Lucy curtsied to the assembly, the deep green gown Sarah had chosen catching the light. She'd been coached on every gesture, every glance. Look regal but approachable. Confident but not arrogant. Beautiful but not vain. It was exhausting. As the court filed past to offer formal greetings, Lucy studied each face, cataloging allies and enemies. Most were simply curious. Some were openly appreciative, particularly the younger nobles who seemed dazzled by her appearance. But others. Lady Helena, wife to Lord Marcus, approached with 3 younger women in her wake. She was beautiful in a cold, calculated way, blonde hair arranged in elaborate loops, gown cut daringly low, jewelry dripping from her throat and wrists. Your Majesty, Helena purred, curtsying shallowly. What a delightful surprise you've been. We were all so concerned for our dear King Timothy. Concerned? Lucy kept her voice pleasant. Well, the rumors were quite specific. We'd been preparing to welcome a more modest beauty. Helena's smile was razor-sharp. It's fortunate that Unveiled's standards of attractiveness differ so dramatically from their reputation. Lucy felt Timothy tense beside her. Before he could intervene, she leaned forward slightly. How kind of you to worry about His Majesty's happiness. Though I must say, I find it curious that rumors of my appearance spread so efficiently through Shadowcrest's court months before our wedding was even announced. Helena's smile froze. One might wonder, Lucy continued softly, who stood to benefit from ensuring the king entered this alliance with diminished expectations. Are you suggesting? I'm suggesting nothing, Lady Helena. Merely observing. As I'm sure you've spent years observing court politics. Lucy's amber eyes held the other woman's gaze. We should be friends, I think. You can teach me so much about how things work here. It was a challenge and an olive branch simultaneously. Helena's eyes narrowed, reassessing. Indeed, Helena said finally. Perhaps we should take tea together. Soon. I'd be delighted. As Helena and her entourage moved on, Timothy's hand covered Lucy's where it rested on the armrest. That was dangerous, he murmured. That was necessary, Lucy replied. She needed to know I'm not prey. She's Marcus's wife. Anything you tell her will go straight to her husband. I know. Lucy glanced up at him. Which is why I'll only tell her things I want Marcus to hear. Something flickered in Timothy's eyes. Surprise? Respect? You're not what I expected. I know. I'm much worse. I'm my father's daughter. That's not a compliment. It's not meant to be. But I learned from him, Timothy. How to survive, how to scheme, how to turn weakness into strength. She squeezed his hand lightly. The question is whether you'll let me use those skills for our kingdom, or whether you'll keep me locked in pretty rooms like a decorative doll. Timothy was silent for a long moment as the next noble approached for greeting. When that exchange finished, he leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. Show me then. Prove you're more than beautiful. Prove you're useful. Give me a week, Lucy said. And access to your trade negotiations with the Riverlands. Why? Because I've heard rumors. And unlike the rumors about me, these ones are true. 5 days later, Lucy sat in the strategy room, maps and trade documents spread across the massive oak table. Timothy stood across from her, arms crossed, watching with his habitual intensity as she made notes in the margins of a contract. Here, she said, circling a clause. And here. These provisions make it look like we're offering favorable terms, but actually, they lock the Riverlands into grain prices that will bankrupt them within 3 years when the drought inevitably hits their eastern provinces. James, who'd been silently observing, leaned forward. How did you know about the drought? Because Unveiled borders the Riverlands' southern edge. We've been tracking weather patterns for years. Our survival depends on predicting crop yields. Lucy pulled out a smaller document she'd drafted. I've rewritten the grain clauses to include price adjustments based on annual harvest assessments. It costs us slightly more in good years, but prevents the Riverlands from collapsing entirely, which would destabilize the entire region. Timothy studied the revisions, his expression unreadable. Marcus drafted these original terms. I know. He'll be furious if I override him. He'll be more furious if his plan to eventually absorb the Riverlands through economic conquest is exposed. Lucy met Timothy's eyes. Which it will be. The Riverlands aren't stupid. They're desperate, but not blind. If we present them with fair terms, we earn genuine alliance. If we try to trap them, we make enemies. Timothy traced the contract revisions with one finger. You're assuming I care about fair versus advantageous. I'm assuming you're smart enough to know that enslaved allies become rebellious subjects. Lucy stood, moving around the table to face him directly. You want trust, Timothy? This is how you build it. Not just between us, but between kingdoms. James looked between them. Your Majesty, if I may, the Queen has a point. Marcus's aggressive expansion policies have made us powerful but isolated. Other kingdoms see us as conquerors, not partners. Because we are conquerors, Timothy said flatly. Were, Lucy corrected. But you don't have to be. You're strong enough now to lead through alliance instead of domination. She placed her hand on his arm. Let me present these revisions to the Riverlands delegation tomorrow. Let me prove that Shadowcrest under your rule can be different. Timothy captured her hand, pulling her closer. They were nearly touching now, the heat between them palpable. And if you fail? If they see it as weakness? Then I'll handle the consequences. But I won't fail. His thumb stroked over her pulse point. You're very sure of yourself. No, Lucy admitted. I'm terrified. But I'm more afraid of being useless to you. Of being decorative rather than essential. Something cracked in Timothy's expression. You could never be useless, Lucy. Even if you were terrible at politics, even if every negotiation failed, he stopped himself, jaw clenching. Even if what? She prompted softly. Even if you were just beautiful, you'd still destroy me. He released her hand abruptly, stepping back. Fine. Present the revisions tomorrow. James will attend as witness. But if this backfires, it won't. Chapter 3. The Cracks in the Armor. 3 weeks into their marriage, Lucy woke to Timothy's arm heavy across her waist and early morning light filtering through silk curtains. She'd grown used to this, the heat of him, the possessive way he held her even in sleep, the sense of safety that came from being claimed by the most powerful predator in the kingdom. Their nights had become stolen sanctuaries. Behind closed doors, Timothy was tender, passionate, vulnerable in ways he'd never show the court. He whispered confessions against her skin, laughed at her dry observations about palace politics, and made love to her like she was precious beyond measure. But come morning, He'd dress in his armor, metaphorical and literal, and become the Alpha King again. Cold. Calculating. Distant. Lucy understood the mask. She wore her own. But sometimes she wished they could burn them both and just be. "You're thinking too loudly," Timothy murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "I can feel your mind racing." "Sorry. Didn't mean to wake you." He tightened his arm around her, pulling her back against his chest. "I have counsel in an hour. James sent word that we received an urgent message from the borderlands." Lucy tensed. "What kind of message?" "Don't know yet. But if it required overnight riders, it's not good." They'd been living in a fragile bubble of peace, managing court politics, negotiating alliances, slowly building trust. But peace never lasted. Not in their world. "I should dress," Lucy said reluctantly. "Stay." Timothy's lips found the curve of her shoulder. "A few more minutes won't change whatever crisis is waiting." Lucy melted into him, letting herself have this. Just this. But her mind was already spinning through possibilities. Border threats usually meant raids. And raids meant. A sharp knock interrupted them. "Your Majesty." James's voice, urgent. "I need to speak with you. Both of you." Timothy was out of bed in seconds, throwing on trousers and a shirt. Lucy grabbed her dressing gown, her heart hammering. James never interrupted them in private unless it was truly dire. Timothy opened the door just enough for James to enter. His beta's face was grim. "The Blackwater pack attacked one of our hunting parties last night. 12 dead, including Duke Morrison's son. They left a message." James held out a blood-stained piece of parchment. Timothy read it, his expression going colder than Lucy had ever seen. "They want Unveiled's territory as compensation for our theft of their rightful queen." Lucy's blood turned to ice. "What?" Apparently, James said carefully, there was an understanding between Duke Morrison and Blackwater's Alpha Kristoff. Morrison's son was supposed to marry Alpha Kristoff's daughter, cementing an alliance. But Morrison needed funds to finalize the arrangement. He planned to conquer Unveiled's remaining territories to secure those funds. "And our marriage prevented that," Lucy finished, understanding dawning. By allying with Shadowcrest, Unveiled gained protection. Morrison lost his target, couldn't fund the wedding alliance, and now Blackwater is furious. "Exactly." Timothy's jaw clenched. "They're calling it an act of aggression. Demanding restitution or war." "Will you give them Unveiled?" Lucy asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Timothy looked at her like she'd gone mad. "Absolutely not. Unveiled is under Shadowcrest's protection. That protection means something. Even if it costs you a war? Even then." He moved to his desk, already pulling out maps. "James, send word to the northern garrisons. I want full defensive positions by tomorrow night. And get Marcus in here. Much as I dislike him, he's our best military strategist." "There's one more thing," James said reluctantly. "The message specifically mentioned the Queen. Said something about false prizes and deceptions that will be revealed." Lucy's stomach dropped. "They know about the rumors. About my father's scheme. Or they're guessing." Timothy studied her face. "Either way, they'll use it against us. Claim the marriage was fraudulent, that the alliance is invalid." "Is there any legal basis for that?" Lucy asked. "No," James said firmly. "The marriage was completed according to all proper rites. The alliance stands regardless of presentation circumstances. But perception matters," Lucy said quietly. "If other kingdoms believe the marriage was built on fraud, then they'll question every treaty we make." Timothy slammed his hand on the desk. "Damn it. This is exactly what Marcus warned about. What I was afraid of." The words hung in the air like poison. "You think this is my fault," Lucy said. "I think your father's deception created vulnerabilities we're now paying for." Timothy wouldn't look at her. "I think if I'd known the truth from the beginning, I could have structured the alliance differently, protected us better." "If you'd known the truth from the beginning, you would have refused the marriage," Lucy shot back. "And Unveiled would have fallen and Blackwater would have the territories they wanted anyway." At least now we're in a position to fight. Are we? Or did we just trade one war for another? Lucy flinched like he'd struck her. James cleared his throat uncomfortably. I'll go arrange that council meeting. He left quickly, closing the door behind them. The silence was suffocating. I'm sorry, Lucy finally said. For all of it. For the lies, the deception, the consequences. But I can't regret marrying you, Timothy. Even if it leads to war. Even if you hate me for it. I don't hate you. Timothy's voice was raw. That's the problem. I should. You're a tactical liability, a source of instability, everything I was trained to avoid. But I can't hate you. I can barely breathe without you now. And that terrifies me more than any war. Lucy crossed to him, placing her hand over his heart. Then let me help. I know Blackwater's territory. Unveiled shared a border with them for generations. I know their tactics, their weaknesses. Let me be useful, not just beautiful and dangerous. Timothy covered her hand with his. The council won't trust you in military planning. Not with Blackwater specifically calling you out. Then I'll work around them. Lucy's mind was already racing. My father will have intelligence about Blackwater's true strength. And I have contacts in Unveiled, people who owe me loyalty. Let me gather information, build our own intelligence network separate from Marcus's. That's dangerous. More dangerous than waiting for Marcus to use this crisis to push me out? Lucy challenged. He's already tried to undermine me once. This attack gives him exactly the ammunition he needs to convince the council that I'm a threat. Timothy was silent, but she could see him calculating odds, weighing risks. Finally, he nodded. Do it. But James goes with you. And you report everything to me, not the council. Agreed. He pulled her against him, holding her like she might disappear. If anything happens to you, it won't. Lucy tilted her face up. I'm my father's daughter, remember? I know how to survive. That's what worries me, Timothy murmured against her hair. Survival often requires sacrifices. I need you to promise me something. What? That you'll choose us over them. Over Unveiled, over your father's schemes, over everything else. Choose us. Lucy's throat tightened. I already have. From the moment I walked down that aisle, I chose you. Timothy kissed her with desperate intensity, like he was trying to brand the promise into her skin. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I'm going to regret this, he said. Probably, Lucy agreed. But at least we'll regret it together. Chapter 4. The Trial of Trust. The catacombs beneath Shadowcrest Palace were exactly as Lucy's vision had shown them, ancient stone corridors lit by flickering torches, the air thick with dampness and secrets. She moved silently through the shadows, Timothy and James flanking her, 3 more of Timothy's most trusted guards following behind. It had taken 2 days of careful planning. 2 days of pretending nothing was wrong while they prepared to catch a traitor in the act. 2 days of Lucy wearing her injury like a badge while secretly healing faster than anyone expected. There, Lucy whispered, pointing to a junction ahead. The meeting chamber is through that archway. Timothy's hand found hers briefly, squeezing. Be careful, the gesture said. She squeezed back. Trust me. They positioned themselves in the alcove surrounding the chamber entrance, completely hidden in darkness. Then they waited. Voices echoed from deeper in the catacombs. 2 men, approaching from the opposite direction. Assure you, the Queen will be discredited within days. Marcus's voice unmistakable. The marriage was fraudulent from the start. We have witnesses willing to testify that Lucy Lamp used magical compulsion to manipulate the king into accepting her. Witnesses you paid, you mean? The second voice was rougher, clearly Blackwater. Alpha Kristoff grows impatient with your schemes, Lord Marcus. He wants action, not more promises. He'll have it. The council meeting tomorrow will expose everything. I've arranged for evidence of the Queen's prophetic abilities, presented as dark magic, of course. The superstitious fools will demand her execution. Marcus sounded pleased with himself. And once she's gone, The king will be malleable again. Desperate for guidance. Lucy's blood ran cold. They knew about her visions. But how? And if King Timothy refuses, the Blackwater agent pressed. Then we moved to option 2. The sleeping draft I've been adding to his wine will make the assassination look natural. Heart failure, tragic but not suspicious. With Timothy dead and no heir, the council will have to choose a new king. And I've spent years ensuring that choice will be me. Timothy went rigid beside Lucy. His hand moved to his sword, but James caught his wrist, shaking his head. Wait. We need him to confess everything. You would murder your own king? The Blackwater agent sounded almost impressed. I would save this kingdom from the corruption of a weak ruler controlled by a manipulative witch, Marcus corrected coldly. Timothy was strong once. But he's been compromised by beauty and lust. Better to end it cleanly and restore Shadowcrest to its proper glory. And Unveiled's territories? Will be yours. As agreed. Once I'm king, the alliance with Unveiled dissolves. You can conquer it at your leisure. Marcus's voice took on a calculating edge. Just ensure your invasion is ready to move the moment Timothy dies. I'll need the external threat to justify consolidating power quickly. Alpha Kristoff will be pleased. The sound of coins changing hands. Same time next week for final arrangements? Agreed. And remember, no one can know about these meetings. If the king suspects. Too late, Timothy said, stepping from the shadows. Marcus spun, his face draining of color. The Blackwater agent reached for his weapon, but James was faster, a blade at the man's throat before he could draw. Your Majesty, Marcus started, his voice shaking. This isn't what it looks like. It looks like treason. Timothy's voice was ice. It looks like conspiracy to commit murder. It looks like selling out your kingdom to our enemies. He stepped closer, and Marcus actually cowered. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? That you could poison me in my own palace? She turned you against me. Marcus pointed at Lucy with shaking hands. The witch cast spells, manipulated your mind. Everything I did was to protect you. You tried to have my queen killed in the forest, Timothy said flatly. You planted evidence to make her look like a traitor. You've been slowly poisoning me for weeks. That's not protection, Marcus. That's attempted murder. The guards moved forward, seizing both Marcus and the Blackwater agent. Marcus struggled, still protesting. The council will never believe her over me. I've served this kingdom for decades. The council will hear every word you just spoke, Lucy said, stepping forward. The acoustics in these catacombs are remarkable. Your confession echoed all the way back to the wine cellars, where we stationed recorders specifically to capture it. Marcus's eyes widened with horror. You planned this. You baited me. We caught you, Lucy corrected. There's a difference. You've been operating in shadows for years, manipulating from the background, poisoning and plotting. We simply gave you enough rope to hang yourself. You think you've won? Marcus snarled, all pretense of civility gone. You think the court will accept a prophetic queen? They'll fear you, Lucy. They'll demand your death just as surely as they'll demand mine. Perhaps, Lucy acknowledged. But I'd rather die standing in truth than live hiding behind lies. Timothy's hand found her shoulder. She won't die. Because I'll stand with her. And anyone who wants to hurt my queen will have to go through me first. How touching, Marcus spat. The mighty Alpha King, brought low by a pretty face and fake visions. Timothy moved so fast Marcus didn't have time to flinch. One moment he was sneering. The next, Timothy had him slammed against the stone wall, forearm across his throat. My wife's visions led us to you, Timothy said softly. Her intelligence, her courage, her gifts, they saved my life and this kingdom. If that's being brought low, then I'll stay in the dirt gladly. Because what you call weakness, I call love. And love, Marcus, is so much stronger than your pathetic schemes. He released Marcus with a shove. Take them to the dungeons. Separately. I want written confessions by morning. As the guards dragged both prisoners away, Marcus's voice echoed back. This isn't over. The court will turn on you both. You'll see. When silence fell, Timothy turned to Lucy. She was shaking, the weight of everything crashing down at once. "We did it," she whispered. "You did it." Timothy pulled her into his arms. "Your visions, your plan, your courage. You saved us, Lucy." "We saved each other," she corrected, burying her face in his chest. "Like we keep doing." James cleared his throat gently. "Your Majesties, we should return to the palace. The council needs to be assembled immediately." Chapter 5: The True Unveiling. 6 weeks later, the morning sun painted the cathedral in shades of gold and crimson as Lucy stood in the preparation chamber, surrounded by a very different kind of energy than her first wedding day. Sarah was there, of course, adjusting the simple crown of winter roses in Lucy's hair. But so was Helena, who'd become an unexpected ally after her husband's imprisonment. And Duke Aldrich's wife, and the wives of 3 other council members who'd supported Lucy during the trial. "You look beautiful," Sarah said softly. "Though technically, everyone already knows that now." Lucy laughed, the sound free and unguarded in a way it hadn't been before. "True. Less pressure this time." "More pressure," Helena corrected, fastening Lucy's cloak. "The first wedding was political theater. This one is personal. The whole kingdom is watching their king and queen choose each other again, publicly declaring love rather than duty." "No pressure at all," Lucy deadpanned, making them all laugh. A knock at the door. James entered, looking unusually emotional. "The king sent me to escort you, Your Majesty. If you're ready." "She's ready," Sarah said, squeezing Lucy's hand. The walk to the cathedral was different too. No heavy veils, no concealing layers. Lucy wore a gown of deep crimson and gold, Shadowcrest's colors, fitted to show her figure rather than hide it. Her face was bare, her hair loose and crowned with roses. She had nothing to hide anymore. The cathedral doors opened, and the assembled court rose as one. But Lucy only had eyes for Timothy. He stood at the altar in formal armor polished to mirror brightness, his dark hair swept back, golden eyes locked on her with an intensity that made her heart race. As she walked down the aisle, alone this time, no father to give her away because she was giving herself, Timothy's expression shifted from reverence to wonder to pure, undiluted love. When she reached him, he took her hands, and she saw his eyes were wet. "You're crying," she whispered. "So are you," he replied, smiling. The priest, the same one from their first ceremony, cleared his throat with barely concealed amusement. "Shall we begin?" "Please," Timothy said, never taking his eyes off Lucy. But before the priest could speak, Timothy held up a hand. "Actually, I'd like to say something first. If I may." The priest stepped back, gesturing permission. Timothy turned to address the assembled court. 6 weeks ago, I stood in this cathedral prepared to fulfill my duty. To marry a stranger for political advantage. I expected nothing beyond a contractual arrangement. He squeezed Lucy's hands. Instead, I got a partner who challenged me, inspired me, and ultimately saved both my life and this kingdom. I got someone who sees through my walls, who calls me out when I'm being a fool, who fights beside me rather than cowering behind me. His voice roughened with emotion. I got the love of my life, disguised as a political necessity. And today, I want everyone here to witness that I'm not marrying Lucy Lamp because my kingdom needs Unveiled's alliance. I'm marrying her because I need her. Because my life without her isn't worth living. Because she makes me want to be a better king, a better man, a better alpha. He turned back to Lucy, his thumbs stroking over her knuckles. You said once that you chose me from the moment you walked down this aisle. Today, I'm choosing you back. Completely. Irrevocably. Forever. Lucy couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. She managed to nod, tears streaming freely now. Your Majesty, the priest said gently, would you like to share your vows as well? Lucy took a shaky breath. I didn't prepare anything elegant. But she looked into Timothy's eyes. You asked me once what was between us. I said everything. I still mean that. You're my friend, my partner, my challenge, my comfort. You're the person I want to celebrate victories with and face failures beside. You see me, truly see me, in all my complicated, messy, gifted, and flawed glory. And you choose me anyway. She smiled through her tears. I was so afraid that my secrets would destroy us. That when you knew the truth about me, you'd turn away. Instead, you stepped forward. You defended me. You trusted me. And that trust is more precious than any crown, any title, any power. I choose you, Timothy, she continued. Not as a king. Not as an alpha. Not as a political necessity. I choose you as the man who makes me laugh, who challenges me to be braver, who holds me when I'm afraid and celebrates with me when I'm triumphant. I choose you as my partner in all things. The priest wisely waited a moment for them both to compose themselves. Then he smiled. By the power vested in me by the gods and this kingdom, I pronounce you, again, husband and wife, king and queen, Alpha and Luna, bound by choice rather than duty, by love rather than necessity. You may, he started, but Timothy had already pulled Lucy into his arms, kissing her with a passion that made the cathedral erupt in cheers and applause. When they finally broke apart, breathless and laughing, Timothy rested his forehead against hers. Mine, he murmured. Yours, Lucy agreed. Always. The celebration that followed was nothing like their first wedding reception. That had been stiff, formal, filled with speculation and gossip. This was joyous chaos, music and dancing, genuine laughter, nobles who'd once sneered now offering sincere congratulations. Lucy found herself swept into a dance with James, who spun her expertly across the floor. I'm glad you survived the initiation into Shadowcrest politics, Your Majesty. Me too. Though it was a close thing. The king is different now, James observed. More open. More human. That's your influence. He was always human, Lucy said. Just buried under layers of armor and responsibility. And you helped him remember that being powerful doesn't mean being invulnerable. James smiled. Thank you for that. For reminding him he's allowed to be happy. As the song ended, Timothy reclaimed her, pulling her into his arms possessively. Stop dancing with my queen. Technically, I'm allowed to dance with her at her own wedding, James pointed out. Technically, you're dismissed, Timothy countered, but he was grinning. Later, as night fell and stars appeared through the cathedral's high windows, Timothy led Lucy to a balcony overlooking the kingdom. The city spread below them, lights twinkling like earthbound stars. Do you remember what I said on our first wedding night? Timothy asked, his arms wrapped around her from behind. You said you had urgent council business, Lucy recalled dryly. He laughed. Before that, when we were alone, I said, you're beautiful. That only makes the lie worse. Lucy's heart clenched at the memory. I remember. I was wrong. Timothy turned her to face him. The beauty wasn't the lie. It was the truth I was too blind and proud to accept. That someone extraordinary had chosen me, and instead of being grateful, I was resentful. You were hurt, Lucy said gently. Deceived. Your reaction was understandable. Maybe. But it was still wrong. He cupped her face. The real unveiling wasn't when I lifted your veil in the cathedral. It was every day after, when you showed me who you truly are. Brave. Brilliant. Kind. Strong enough to be vulnerable. Powerful enough to be gentle. You're going to make me cry again, Lucy warned. Good. I like when you cry at weddings. Especially ours. Timothy kissed her softly. I have something for you. He pulled a small wooden box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, simple gold with a single clear stone. It's not fancy, Timothy said. But this stone is from the northern mountains, where my mother was born. She gave it to my father when they married, told him it represented clarity. Seeing truly, without illusions. He slipped it onto Lucy's finger beside her wedding band. I want to see you truly, always. Not the princess, not the queen, not the prophet. Just Lucy. My Lucy. Lucy's tears spilled over again. I love you so much it terrifies me sometimes. Good, Timothy said, echoing his earlier words. Fear means it matters. And this, us, it matters more than anything. A familiar voice called from the doorway. Your Majesties? The Council wanted me to inform you that Blackwater has formally requested peace negotiations. Alpha Kristoff is willing to discuss terms. Lucy and Timothy exchanged glances. Tell them we'll consider it, Timothy said. Tomorrow. Tonight is ours. When James had left, Lucy leaned back against Timothy. Do you think we'll actually have peace? With Blackwater? Maybe. They lost their inside agent, their invasion plans are exposed, and they know we're prepared for them. Kristoff's not stupid, he'll take negotiations over certain war. Timothy pressed a kiss to her temple. But even if we don't, we'll face it together. Together, Lucy echoed. She looked down at the kingdom spread before them, at the life they'd built through deception and danger and desperate trust. Did you ever imagine this? When you were standing at that altar expecting an ugly bride? Never, Timothy admitted. I imagined duty, obligation, cold nights, and political maneuvering. I never imagined. He pulled her closer. This. You. Us. Do you regret it? Lucy asked, half teasing. Marrying an ugly bride? Timothy turned her in his arms, his golden eyes blazing with intensity and love and possessive certainty. I regret nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because that ugly bride turned out to be the most beautiful thing that ever happened to me, and I'm not talking about your face. Lucy smiled, radiant and free. What are you talking about, then? Your courage. Your intelligence. Your heart. Timothy kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. You're everything. Far below, the kingdom celebrated their king and queen's second wedding. Celebrated a love story that had started with deception and ended with devotion. Celebrated the truth that sometimes the best things in life come disguised as something else entirely. And on the balcony above, two people who'd been strangers forced into marriage held each other under the stars, marveling at the miracle of finding genuine love in the wreckage of political scheming. Come to bed, wife, Timothy murmured against her hair. In a moment, husband. Lucy savored the cool night air, the feeling of being completely known and completely loved. I just want to remember this. Everything about tonight. You'll remember. Timothy's arms tightened around her. Because we'll have thousands more nights like this. A whole lifetime of nights, of days, of moments. Promise? On my honor as your alpha, your king, your partner, and your very foolish husband who almost let pride destroy the best thing in his life. Timothy smiled against her neck. I promise you everything, Lucy. Everything I have, everything I am, everything I'll ever be. Then I'm the richest woman in the kingdom, Lucy said. Hand in hand, they left the balcony and walked through the palace toward their chambers. Not toward duty, not toward obligation, not toward the cold performance of a political marriage, but toward home, toward warmth, toward the private sanctuary where a king could be just a man, where a queen could be just a woman, where two people who'd married for all the wrong reasons could love each other for all the right ones. The door closed behind them, sealing them away from the world. And in the quiet darkness, broken only by moonlight and whispered promises, they made love like it was the first time and the thousandth time all at once, with passion and tenderness, with desperation and certainty, with the knowledge that they'd found something rare and precious and absolutely worth fighting for. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Blackwater negotiations, court politics, the endless work of ruling a kingdom. But tonight, they had each other. And in the end, that was the only crown that truly mattered. The end. Thank you for watching. Kindly like, follow, and stay tuned for more beautiful story.